Hey, are you hiring? If you answered yes, let XenTegra Staffing help staff your IT people needs. Head over to XenTegra.com/XenTegra Staffing to find out more. XenTegra Staffing, we can staff your IT people needs. Welcome to another edition of the Citrix Session with your hosts, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton, your source for all things Citrix.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 59 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got a slightly different crew with me today. No Bill Sutton today. Bill is busy on some project organization, project management work. Plus, we're recording this on a slightly different schedule because our guest today is coming to us out of India, I believe. And we're going to talk through that here in a minute. But I do have Ben Rogers with me. Ben is a local sales engineer here in the Carolinas. Ben, how's it going?
I'm doing well this morning, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm good. Excited to get this conversation going today. Are you staying busy enough, Ben?
Oh yeah, man. It's business is good, especially for the beginning of the year. So we're looking forward to 2021. We're hoping that we get to open up business. The new administration gets things settled down, and we get back to some sort of normalcy.
Yeah, we'll see. But certainly time will fix a lot of things. Hey, so Ben, we've got with us Agush. Agush is coming to us from Citrix in India. Agush, you're Agriwal, right? That's the last name, Agush Agriwal, right?
Yes, it's pronounced Ayush Agarwal.
Ayush, got it. Can you give us a little background on you and actually where you're coming to us from today?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Andy, for having me over this podcast. It's always amazing to interact with XenTegra and the listeners of XenTegra. So thank you so much. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a senior product manager with Citrix, and I'm based out of our Bangalore office. That's in India. And in my current role, I primarily manage the product strategy and the overall product execution for the Citrix Workspace app. My focus is primarily on the Windows platform. So I interact quite a bit with folks from Microsoft and Citrix in my current role as well. Essentially, I would say that my role revolves around ensuring that we have a great user experience, especially for the end users of Citrix. So your employees, your workforce actually ends up using Citrix Workspace app, and that's the app that I'm responsible for, and thereby I'm responsible for the overall user experience. So yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Well, I have a question for you before we jump into it. If I forget, though, make sure we come back to the comment around how important the endpoint and the application of the endpoint is to that user experience. Question for you. This is kind of just my general curiosity. How many employees does Citrix have today in India? India is probably the second biggest country Citrix has employees. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is correct, Andy. So in India, we have about 1,200 to 1,300 employees, and we're all spread across 3 to 4 cities. But yeah, it's quite a lot of people out here. Most of our research and development activities are focused in Bangalore, while we do have sales and some bits of marketing. But a lot of the end user computing side of things happen based out of the India offices.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with yourself or someone like you or multiple people just to talk about how the technology center of India, how India became a technology hub and all the key plays that were played by the people or the government along the way. That whoever made that happen. I live in North Carolina. In North Carolina, we have a thing called the Research Triangle Park, and in the 50s, I think, when the governor decided that he would take this area located between 3 universities and make it a tech hub, and it is one of the second biggest tech hubs, second to Silicon Valley in the country. It may not be the second, but it's somewhere in the mix. That was, the stroke of a pen made that happen, and people carried it out. Someday I would love to find information or a documentary or something to write up on how India did something similar.
Absolutely, Andy. In fact, you'd be interested to know that Bangalore, where we're all located, is actually called the Silicon Valley of India, and we kind of model things very similar to how California did, and Bangalore is now known as the startup hub of India as well. So it's an interesting landscape for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition to become the next Silicon Valley, and I think you guys are definitely there. That's good and bad, right? I mean, I'm assuming the cost of housing and things have gone through the roof in the past 10 years. Is that one of the byproducts?
Yes, absolutely. Housing prices have seen a hike. The number of people in the city have seen a steady growth, more pollution, unfortunately, and more traffic. But with the whole work from home situation, things are a little better. But we still hope that we can get back to our, a normal work life.
Yeah, it's going to be one of my next questions. Are you guys back in the office yet? Are you guys having vaccines are happening in India, not happening in India? What's your latest? What's the latest there?
Things are definitely better than before, but we're still all working from home. We're all maintaining all the precautions and safety measures. To the extent possible, the advisory is to stay at home and work from home. But things are definitely better because the number of cases has seen a steady decline. And we hope that trend continues. Also, with the vaccination starting out, there's some hope that things will get better. So, it's a little better, but we're all still at home.
Okay. Well, let's jump into your blog. The title of your blog from December of 2020 is Citrix Workspace App 2012. So just Citrix Workspace App 2012 for Windows. Simplifies manageability, and there's a lot in that title by itself, but let's dissect it a little bit. This is the Citrix Workspace app, so this is the FAT application, if you will. This is version 2012, which means it came out in December of 2020, and it specifically says Windows, so we're talking about Microsoft Windows, and you highlighted a minute ago, that's your role at Citrix is to be responsible for that application running on a Microsoft endpoint. I probably want to stop here and pause. A lot of people are very, very confused about how you connect to Citrix. You go through a browser and then you launch your session. It either opens via the browser, via HTML code, or more likely, if you have the Windows, or if you have the Workspace app installed, specifically in this case on Windows, it actually will try to launch via the app. So it's basically a file type association where it launches the actual app. Or in some cases, people actually launch the app first and connect into the environment and actually launch their sessions from within the app, and they don't use a browser at all. I can't tell you how many people have worked in the Citrix world for years and years and years and don't actually understand all the different flows of the IPs and the network flows in those different scenarios. It's something I've spent a good bit of time studying. But the whole point here is you're responsible for the Workspace app, Citrix Workspace app for Windows, and the most recent release is what we're going to talk about today, and specifically how one of the problems that I've seen for 20 plus years now is getting better, and that is the ability to manage the applications itself, manage the application, so the Workspace app itself, and the ability to keep it up to date and feature management as well. That's what we're going to jump into here. I appreciate you joining for that, and hopefully that helps people get the context. One other quick point, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, the Citrix experience, the user experience is very, very, very much integral, dependent on the Citrix app that is being used to connect to the environment and the sessions. It's not all back end. And I have people all the time that very, very much focus on the back end of the Citrix solution, which is extremely important. But it's synchronous or asynchronous. It takes both ends to have all the right settings and configurations and abilities in order for the user to have an optimal or at least an appropriate user experience.
And that's one thing I wanted to ask is there any advantage to using the Fat Client app on an endpoint versus having an HTML environment? Before coming to Citrix, I was a Citrix user and a Citrix administrator for a long time, and I come from the program neighborhood days, and so I required that we had the client on the endpoint. I always felt like it was better to run the client and let the client do the processing on the endpoint. But I have had some people to go, getting into a zero trust model, not trust anything, that browser clients do have a place. So I just wonder if you could kind of tell us what some of the advantages, disadvantages, and so, I can educate myself, but also our clients that are looking, should I continue to manage the Fat Client and have to update it on the endpoints, or should I go ahead and go to a browser type system and not have to worry about any clients on the endpoint? So I'm interested to hear your views on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Ben. So I would say that, the way we've actually designed the application, whether it is the Windows-based application or the HTML5-based application, is essentially for flexibility. So people can actually head to their preferred mode of access. If they prefer to access it via an application on the Windows desktop, they can do so. But if they're more conscious about not installing another application or just being able to access everything within their browser, we have it there in terms of HTML5. So I would say it's mostly around the use cases, especially let's consider scenarios where you just need to access a desktop for something quick. You do not want to access virtual apps in desktops quite often. HTML5 is very easily suited because it's just another tab in your browser, and you can do possibly anything you can do on Windows desktop right from your browser. So it's really a matter of use case. Of course, there is a difference in terms of capabilities. There are capabilities which, the native workspace app on the Windows platform supports, especially around, graphics improvements and, a bunch of other capabilities. More recently, we've introduced something called app protection, which is our anti-screen capture and anti-key logging feature. So that's at this point of time only available on the Windows platform. Now, if you're looking for something simple and quick, HTML5 is certainly the way to go. That has its own benefits. We have a bunch of other features which are supported on the HTML5 client and which are very suited for a browser-based access. So I'd really say that it's a matter of choice as well as use case. And it boils down to the same story that we've been telling our customers since ages now, that hey, we enable you to work from anywhere, any device, and any mode of access. So, that's my 2 cents on that.
So here's the way I try to boil that down when talking to clients. If you're looking for a minimal access with many of the features not enabled, but minimal access from a BYOD scenario, then absolutely consider using the HTML5 client, which just works inside your browser. If it's a endpoint owned by the organization, and you need features, first of all, let me just say kudos to Citrix. Their HTML5 story for the client side is the best in the industry, but it is a whole nother path of development. It's a whole nother way of trying to get features from the Fat client to the HTML5 client. And if you just go out to blogs.citrix.com or citrix.com/blogs and just type in HTML5, you'll find lots of articles that go feature by feature as to when they're introduced into the HTML5 for you. Great way to get ramped up on that. But Ben, the way I would normally answer that one, if it's BYOD and you're looking for minimal access, HTML5 will get the job done minimally. But any other scenario, you really need the Fat client because you won't go very far before you run into some type of feature that the Fat client has knocked out 20 years ago that the HTML5 is still at best working around.
That's interesting because, when we have clients that are doing call centers and we get into voice over IPs, that's when we start really leaning on the client. And, I also would like to talk about, how we can break out some of the traffic from the client and have it talk directly to, like Office 365 with some of our Teams integration. The endpoint can actually take some of that processing on and direct that directly to Teams instead of having to bring that back to the VDA.
So that's actually a really interesting conversation, and maybe Ayush can get into that at some point in this. Citrix is doing things with the WebRT where the fat client is going to be able to eliminate the need for the kludginess of the offloading and just do that within Citrix itself, and so it won't have to be Teams anymore. It can be any collaborative thing you want can show up and just work because Citrix will be providing the magic in the Workspace app versus having to try to integrate the magic out of the whatever the collaboration or VoIP solution is. So that's actually a really good way to kind of jump into this. So Ayush, you want to kind of help us with the introduction of your blog here and what you're covering in the intro to try to set the tone for the topic?
Sure. Thanks, Andy. So essentially, over the last couple of months, what we've really been focusing on is end user experience. That's primarily because a lot of folks are now working from home, and employee experience is of paramount importance. And even if you see our last few offerings in terms of our releases, you'd find features that improve the overall experience with the application itself. We made a bunch of improvements around authentication, so you don't have like a multi-layered authentication screen. It's very seamless now. We also prompt you for authentication fewer number of times, and so on and so forth. When we were thinking about, our product strategy and who we want to cater to, we essentially have two sets of user personas. One is, of course, the end users, who are basically your employees who are accessing your virtual apps, desktops, files, and whatnot. But we also have another very, very important persona, which is the administrators who actually manage Citrix, including managing the app on the endpoints. And our story has always been that we cater to these two personas. We want to make the experience really frictionless for end users, but we also want to ensure that we provide simplified manageability to administrators. And going with this notion or going with this philosophy, the specific release that we came up with in December 2020 was focused on simplifying admin manageability. We've, of course, done a bunch of stuff, which we will certainly talk about. But it goes on to say that, in these times, whenever somebody has an issue, let's say an end user has an issue, the first thing they do is to reach out to their administrators. And again, it becomes imperative to actually make it easy for administrators to be able to even deploy this application or even get to know what's happening on the end user side of things. So that's where the 2012 release, which we called out a month back, is specifically focused on simplifying admin manageability. And that's really what the blog is about, and that's really what this specific release was about as well.
Yeah, and what you've done in the blog is you kind of stepped through some of these. So, hey Ben, as a former IT director, did you run into a lot of scenarios where the endpoint Citrix Workspace app was something you needed more evolved, or was it usually pretty good and good enough to get your job done, and you never really, like these things we're going to talk about now, these are like, oh wow, these are great new things to have. Were there ever challenges from your perspective from the endpoint?
Well, I mean, it always creeps up as a support ticket. You have some weird thing going on with the user, and then you come to find out that if you upgrade the client, that fixes the weirdness. So a lot of the upgrade strategy we have is we didn't want to get too far away from what was, up to date and being released. But a lot of times it solved a problem, and then we said, okay, let's get in front of this and deploy it across the board before somebody else has that. I do have an interesting scenario right now with one of our customers where they did an installation of Workspace. And when they did some arguments. I think they were trying to lock it down, and they're needing to do an upgrade with Workspace, and these arguments won't allow them to do it. So what they're having to do is come and run the uninstall utility or the clean utility and then reinstall Workspace. So it's interesting to see how we're addressing some of these problems, and yet we're seeing some of these things in the field. So I compliment Citrix for getting ahead of this. And yes, whatever we can do to make the log collection easier and to get the administrators, the tools they need in their hands to resolve problems quickly, I'm all about, from, an SC and a former customer.
Yeah, so let's jump into these. Use your first one here talks about the logging capabilities and turning that on, and to what detail you want it on. I assume you can do this through some type of Active Directory or registry setting, but also it looks like maybe you guys have made it so where the end user can just turn logging on themselves. Is that true?
Absolutely, Andy. So in the past, I think the way administrators would usually do, or let's just take a step back and understand how the process really works, right? Let's say an end user hits a specific issue. Maybe he's unable to launch his desktop or application. He contacts his administrator, and the administrator would usually play around with some registry keys, which is, of course, not very safe. Or he would actually use this complementary tool which we had developed, which we call the receiver diagnostic tool, and install that on the endpoint and play around with that utility to actually capture logs. We certainly realize that this is a pain point for administrators and for end users alike, and it helps neither of them. So we built this log collection capability within the app itself. So what that actually does is that you can just launch this log collection utility from within the application and just hit on, just set the level of logging that you want to collect logs at, and just say start logging. Reproduce the issue and just stop collecting the logs and send it over to the administrator. It's as simple as that. So just a few clicks and you're done with the complete logging of the complete issue itself. And in case you need to open a support ticket with Citrix, these logs are very easily transferable to Citrix support as well. So this is one of the key asks from the field as well. We've had a lot of customers saying that, hey, can you do something to make log collection more seamless for us? And this specific feature that we actually built was very much in line with that feedback. And of course, log collection for an application is a basic capability as well. So that's something that we've delivered in 2012.
Yeah, that's great. Ayush, I want to make a comment real quick. If you change roles, tell me, because you're a guy. So the Workspace app for Windows is always the leader in what you guys do, right? There's been multiple times in my career I needed you or whoever your predecessor was, and I had to go figure out who it was. Now I know where you're at. And I'm going to be coming to you asking some questions, because a lot of times it's the person on the Workspace app side of the Citrix equation that knows the most about the user experience and what should or should not be happening and what is supported. So that's finding you through this blog is actually going to be really valuable to me. And I also need to know who your Linux counterpart is. I'm assuming you don't have anything to do with the Linux side, right? That's somebody else.
Yeah, that's another person on my team. So yeah, we're happy to help you in any way we can. Just hit us up and we're there for help.
No, that's great. Hey, Ben, I can 100% relate to what Ayush is saying here in terms of making it easy for users to collect their own logs and get them over to the help desk or the support folks. I've lived that myself, and having to go and tell them to go into the registry. Oh, wait a minute, you don't have rights, and enable some logging is just a nightmare. Honestly, this feature, this is a necessity really from a support perspective. Any thoughts on this one, Ben?
Oh yeah, I think the more power you can give to the end user at the time that they need support. I agree with you. I've been in cases where they would go and do something, and I came from healthcare, so everything had to be extremely locked down, and so sometimes the security would get in the way of troubleshooting. So this seems like a very good tool to me. Now, one of the questions that I have is, will the Citrix admins be able to see these logs, or do they have to take these logs directly to a Citrix support engineer?
Yeah, so at this point of time, the logs are available on the end user's machine. They can be really captured as a zip file and transferred to Citrix support. We are going to, in the future, make it simpler to send across these kind of logs to, Citrix support as well. But at this point of time, you can very easily take the zip file and move it across as you please.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next item you called out here. And honestly, as I was reading back through the blog, this one shocks me, and I'm going to need some evolution on what you're talking about here. But domain pass-through, right? That in the Windows world, and Ben brought up a program neighborhood agent and program neighborhood back in the old days. Domain pass-through through the Citrix app into the Citrix environment, so the user wasn't challenged to authenticate again. That one to me has been a done deal for a while. What are you guys talking about in evolving that here in the blog and in the current release?
Sure, Andy. So, essentially, this was a feature that we supported with our on-prem storefront, and this was a very big hit among our customers as well. Now, as we're moving and as we're encouraging customers to move to the cloud, we built the Citrix Workspace, which is really the single pane of glass for everything Citrix that you need, right? And with that in focus, we decided that, hey, domain pass-through is something that must be supported with Citrix Workspace as well. So while it was supported for quite a lot of time on Citrix Storefront, we've now introduced support for domain pass-through to Citrix Workspace. So all you need to do is to sign into your Windows desktop, and Citrix Workspace app will automatically grab those credentials and ensure that you're signed into Citrix Workspace as well. So
okay, so I'm gonna call you. Yeah, I'm gonna challenge you on something real quick. You're doing what almost all people in the Citrix world do to me, and they use the word workspace generally. What you're saying is Citrix Workspace app can now do domain pass-through to Citrix Workspace service.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that makes total sense. And if you could send out a memo to everyone at Citrix and say, when they use the word workspace, please be clear about what you're talking about. That one drives me up a wall. Everybody from David Hinshaw down uses the word workspace to mean like everything under the Citrix sun, and it just about drives me nuts.
Yeah, but Andy, think about, I agree with some of what you're saying, but think about the beauty of this from in a healthcare facility where a doctor wants to log on and he doesn't want to fiddle fart around with multiple logins. He wants to get to his workspace. Now we have the capability from the Windows login, getting a physician in, auto-launching Workspace without them having to log in again, getting them to their workspace, to their applications, to their files, to the things they need to use from that one login. That's going to be a dreamland for a lot of executives.
So Ben, I totally agree, but you just used the workspace generally 5 times. Me as the consultant, I got to go in and explain what Ben meant by workspace every time he used it. That's what I'm trying to point out.
Yeah, well, I get you there, but I really think that this is a big movement in the experience. And so, I'm excited to demo this to people as far as log in and then boom, you're in the Workspace application talking to our Workspace services in the cloud.
I love the way you just said that, because you said it absolutely right, and it would make 100% sense to anybody who knows what they're talking about and has to go implement it. Absolutely, I totally agree with the feature. It's just the terminology that I struggle with. Okay, so yeah, that's awesome, and and as Ben pointed out, a feature that you kind of have to have, right, if you're going to have that seamless user experience. And we've mentioned user experience a couple times on this podcast. The differentiator in Citrix is user experience. Everything starts with user experience, and that's in my opinion, kind of legacy Mark Templeton stuff. That it's all about the user. but at the same time, it's all got to work to have the different components in it. So, all right. So the next piece we're talking about here is something you brought up a minute ago, Ayush, and that is the app protection story and how that is, a first-class citizen in the Citrix Workspace app for Windows version 2012 story that you're writing here. Can you want to address what you guys are doing around the app protection piece?
Sure, Andy. I think firstly, I must call out that app protection is one feature that all of our customers have just loved. And we're seeing a lot of interest around this feature, especially because a lot of end users are now working from home, and endpoint security is of paramount importance given the situation we are in. So app protection is essentially our feature which kind of prohibits any kind of screen captures or keylogging malware from grabbing all your sensitive information. And that's one feature that we've been working for quite some time. Coming to 2012, we've actually made a bunch of enhancements to app protection. So in the past, you weren't really given a choice around what you could protect with app protection. We would just protect everything that the app has to offer, right? From virtual apps, desktops, to your login screen, to even your workspace user interface. With this release, we have introduced the capability to selectively choose which portions of the application you would like to protect with app protection. So if you choose to just protect the virtual apps and desktops, and you say that, hey, we do not want to protect the authentication screen and workspace user interface, so be it. You can go ahead and configure that as an administrator. So essentially, the administrator has full power on which parts of the app should be protected with app protection and which ones are okay to just be as they are. So that's really the next call out that we've done in the blog as well.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, are you guys talking to people about app protection a lot? And do they know it's very much a Windows-centric endpoint world? And I would love, Ayush, if you could elaborate on what you guys do on the Linux side, because thin clients become a conversation there, but actually Linux and Mac. But Ben, are you hearing from a lot of people that are finding this feature something they've been longing for?
Yes, we actually are, and I think this is wonderful that this is coming to market here. For us to be able to, the in the demos, what I hear is, you got Mary Jane. She's working from home. She's the HR lady. She's in the HR system, but then she gets called away from her desk, and her kid comes and does a Zoom meeting on her desk, and now she's in the HR system. What this feature would do would basically just blank that screen. So, the likelihood of that happening in my house would be zero, because I have a dedicated machine myself. But as the demo says, if somebody was to come up and use the machine and get into a remote meeting, they do have a way of ensuring that information would not be seen by third parties. So I think that's great. I also could see this being in the medical business, where you've got a doctor that's in an EMR record, and they've been asked to join an emergency Teams meeting. Well, they don't necessarily need to display that EMR information in that Teams meeting, but they might be required to share their screen for a PPT or an EKG reading or something they need to share with the emergency physicians they're dealing with. So I just definitely see where there's a lot of benefit to this, and customers are asking about this because they do realize that they've now extended their infrastructure into areas that they don't have control over, and this is a way for them to ensure that there's, security and privacy in this area.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ayush, I did mention briefly Mac and Linux. How far ahead is the Citrix Workspace app for Windows? How far ahead is it compared to the Citrix Workspace app for Linux and Citrix Workspace app for Mac as it relates to app protection? And you don't have to go into a ton of detail, just in general, how far ahead is it?
Yeah, so it's already available on the Citrix Workspace app for Mac, and it's coming very, very soon on Linux. I can tell you that.
With close to 100% feature parity?
Yes.
That's awesome. That is a kudos to Citrix. That is a big accomplishment. You guys announced a couple years ago that you were going to try to treat all the major operating systems equally, and it wasn't going to be a Windows first, and everything else was a lagger world. And you guys have definitely shown that you are committed to doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
Any device, buddy.
Yeah. Like we said, it's the AnyNest story really there.
Okay. Well, can I do app protection on my iPhone?
Well, for all you know, that's coming soon too.
So while Ben is right, any device, the truth is that's a really big commitment on the technical side to do that, and Citrix has done a good job. But any is a big word, right? It's a very big 3-letter word. Okay. And this is coming from a guy who has to go and explain, I got to come in behind the marketing, explain all the things that work and all the things that don't quite work yet. And, that's why my beard is gray.
Hey, Andy, I'm gonna segue us into this next item here, because this is something that really does have me excited. That this feature, has now landed. And then when you look at our product portfolio, and I'm getting a little salesy here, and I hate to do that on the podcast, but when you look at the Citrix portfolio and you look how this meshes with something like SD-WAN, this becomes a very powerful thing for customers in being able to leverage, remote site connections. So I'm excited to dive into this. I know I stole a little bit of the thunder, but still, I think this is something that administrators should perk up to, because there's a lot of power behind this technology right here.
So Ben, just to be clear, you're talking about the WebRTC piece or something else?
The optimizations, man, how we can do these local optimizations and utilize the hardware. He mentions the Teams optimization here, but there's other optimizations that are coming down the pipe or could already be, in product. But, just the ability for us to leverage that local hardware and increase the user experience by also virtualizing this environment,
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna actually take what you said and tweak it a little bit. You said hardware, and it's not wrong, but I do want to make sure this conversation is really about the magic of the software capabilities, which is the WebRTC piece, which then allows you to leverage either the endpoint or some optimization of the protocol delivery back and forth. So hopefully that doesn't upset you, but this is really about WebRTC and Citrix knowing that needs to be leveraged as much as possible for end user experience, whether that means offloading to the local hardware or just a more optimal back and forth on the protocol side, or offloading on the back end side potentially. But so Ayush, you want to talk about what you guys are doing to take the optimization story further for more solutions using WebRTC?
Yeah, sure, Andy. So as you can see, with 2012, one of the important things that we did is that we enhanced the WebRTC media engine. And this media engine can now really honor the proxy server configured on the client machine as well. So that's really, again, tying back to our conversation around, how we are actually trying to optimize and, actually deliver some amazing performance as well in any given configuration setting. And that's really how, we're enhancing Microsoft Teams optimization capabilities in general. And going forward, also performance.
I want to get you clear on that, because a lot of people, they hear that and they think Teams, but the concepts you're using around Teams are going to be used for Zoom and Cisco Jabber and on and on and on, right? I mean, that WebRTC, reusing that concept over and over again, those SDKs, that's the magic here.
Yes, absolutely, Andy. Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think just want to point out that we are committed to enhancing the performance, and we've been working very hard on the Microsoft Teams optimization side to deliver really high quality and high performance. So release on release, we've made several tons of improvement around Microsoft Teams optimization as well, and we're continuing to do so at this point of time.
Can you tell us where Zoom falls? Zoom's had this massive uptick. Where's Zoom fall in that stack? Or maybe you can't tell us right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there are talks internally to see how we can support that. I'd say that, we have those talks, but we are working towards delivering some optimized solutions for Zoom as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this scenario yesterday where one of my new salespeople was doing a Zoom meeting with me, technically a Ring Central meeting with me, and they were inside their virtual desktop, and there was this additional lag going on because of the extra protocol flow. And I said, "Why are you doing that?" And they said, "Well, I've got my old email, and the other one, I don't want to get rid of it," which was really just kind of a coaching thing. But right now, we are all in this conundrum of, if you've got a Citrix virtual desktop, if you're using Teams, then make sure that optimization's turned on. You're golden. But on any given day, I'm on 15 different collaboration solutions, and that forces me out of my virtual desktop. And that's like as you pointed out in the article here, that's one of the big next steps, is to get it where all those things just work. And the beauty of what Citrix is doing is you guys recognize that, and it's not a one-by-one scenario. You're trying to create a solution that they all can just plug into and work.
Absolutely, Andy. Yeah, and you'll see a lot of optimizations coming in future as well.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, thoughts on what you covered there, in addition to how you approached it to start?
No, I think it's awesome, man. I mean, I'm looking at some of this WebRTC stuff that's going on, and I'm glad that Citrix is playing in this ballgame. I'm glad that we're able to deliver a good experience to our users, a high def experience to our users. And like with call centers, I see this being used every day. People asking about this. We're architecting around this. So I definitely see more of this coming and being more utilized as we move forward. The work from home whole scenario has kind of forced this hand, because people are having to stay home and they're having to distribute that work back out to the home. And some of these companies, like we've got a TechFin company here in Charlotte, that they've said they're not going back to the office. So they're utilizing this to do their call centers.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. All right. Well, you want to bring us home here and kind of just wrap this up and help us understand where we're going next?
Yeah, sure, Andy. I think we're committed to experience, right? And like I was saying, be it simplifying manageability for administrators or improving the overall experience for end users, that will continue to be our focus. Even in the upcoming releases, you will see that we're going to simplify a lot of things for both end users and admins. And the experience is going to be better than what it was even before. So a lot of optimizations coming out there, a lot of performance enhancements, a lot of experience improvements. And we're very, very excited to see where we're headed to from an end user computing and experience point of view. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I think it's really encouraging to see a lot of great feedback from the field at this point of time. And we're really taking in any kind of feedback to improve the app as well as to improve experience for our end users. And that's really our focus at this point of time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. No, I appreciate it. This is extremely valuable. Ping me every time you come out with one of these blogs, and if I don't see it, I'd love to have you on. The Windows Workspace app story is a great genesis for the entire Citrix story, because it is the one that gets the attention first. It is the one that has the first features turned on. It is the one that addresses most user initiated goals and features that Citrix wants to add. It is part of the equation in a Citrix virtual app and desktop story for sure. And the more we can know about what you guys are doing, the more we'll know about the overall solution and how it works and where it's going. So I appreciate you joining. Ben, any other questions or comments for Ayush before we allow him to leave us?
No, I wholeheartly agree with you. The Workspace app is where work begins, and I do appreciate you including me today. As always with these podcasts, man, I learn a ton. I walk away, looking at things that I need to research. So great session, guys. I really appreciate it. As always, learning a bunch, and I look forward to future sessions.
Yeah. All right.
You too.
Yeah, Ayush, what time is it? What time? It's about bedtime, right, for you?
It's about 9:30 p.m. in India right now, but that's fine. Always a pleasure to talk to anybody who's interested to talk about Citrix Workspace app.
Yeah. All right, sir. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you joining.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Andy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Citrix Session with your hosts, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton. A special thanks to our guest for attending today's podcast. Podcast produced by Pete Downing. For any input, or if you'd like to be a part of our podcast, please email us at info@XenTegra.com. Please head over to XenTegra.com/podcast to listen to all podcasts in this series. This podcast is copyrighted by XenTegra LLC.